Hi everyone, we had a really good discussion this week. We are at such an exciting time in our field. I love when we get to talk about psychoanalysis and Freud because honestly, that is what our field is most known for. Most people think of Freud when they are asked about psychology in general. Most of us are asked if we're going to be counselors when they learn that we're studying psychology. So, this is a really important part, and I feel like it's something that we've all been waiting for. And in lectures, our teacher keeps telling us, we'll get there every time when we talk about Freud. So we're finally here, and it's really exciting. In today's discussion, I think that we really kind of double down on the fact that just because a lot of Freud's ideas were discredited and we don't really practice a lot of that today, we were talking about how far away, like how few and far between psychoanalysis are today, really difficult to find them and typical programs to accredit them. So I think that even though a lot of those contributions aren't necessarily still practiced, some of his deeper, more important contributions are actually to the system of psychoanalysis and showing that psychology could have these different branches, these different systems. They could coexist, and it didn't have to be so linear and so focused on just the idea of what could happen in a lab, experimental psychology, kind of the opposite of Gestalt, where they thought that everything had to be entirely scientific, and with behaviorism, where everything had to be only stimulus reaction. And instead of talking about what's in here, we were kind of away from that. And Freud kind of turned and said, you know what? No, the mind does matter, and we have more than just one area of the mind. There's a subconscious area too, and trauma matters. And that's interesting. That's not something that I feel that we've really seen in the history of psychology thus far. Maybe like way back if we're talking ancient Greeks and stuff like that. But typically, we weren't talking about defense mechanisms. We weren't talking about a whole lot of mental illness. I mean, now it's getting a little bit deeper with the idea of talk therapy. That's really interesting, and I think it was just a huge step for our field. We would not be where we are today if it were not for Freud, and I don't like that a lot of he gets such a bad name for the things that he said, and I totally agree that a lot of his teachings were kind of iffy. But because of that, it doesn't mean that he needs to be completely discredited because he really did a lot for our field. And it's really important that we learn what he did for us. And I think that it's really cool that we got to talk about that this week and talk about why the picture that most people have of psychology is what it is. And we've broken it down to the fact that it's pretty much because of what Freud did to bring our field to the forefront, to help mitigate both the scientific end and the clinical end and say these can coexist. I think that that's a really huge contribution and something that we still are practicing today. So even though his actual teachings may not still be in practice, some of his core fundamentals that he instituted into our entire system of psychology are still being practiced today. So again, I thought that this was a really good discussion this week. I really like this topic, and I'm super excited that we got to talk about it. Also, if any of you guys are Game of Thrones fans, good luck tomorrow. It's going to be a rough one.